Good afternoon. Welcome to a Good Guy Sports Special, live from the Duke University Football Stadium at Wallace Wade Stadium. We're going to talk about the history of it and involving, including how it all got started, involving with the history of it. We will also deep dive into the history of the Duke athletic facility, of the history of it, of the different complexes, and we'll get to our later and we'll discuss the later issues involving college sports a little later. But right now, before our next guest comes on, we are going to start us off with the history of Wallace Wade Stadium at Duke University.
We got to introduce
but we'll get to that a little later. But right now, we sitting right next to me is a person of mine who I got a tour with for the very first time last time I saw him. Welcome in Kevin Bryant, who is a volunteer of Duke Athletics, alongside Dave, who is the current radio play-by-voice for the Duke Blue Devils men's basketball team. So before, awesome great to be with you. Now before I ask you, so about myself, I actually started my college career at the University of South Carolina as a sports management major. I was there for about a few years, and for my biggest takeaway, that they actually have the best women's basketball team down there, led by Don Staley, and they are one of the best. They are by far one of the greatest, probably one of the greatest women's basketball team of all time, in my opinion. So so that's what I wanted to throw it out there and just tell you all about it. So Kevin, it's great to be here, and thanks for having me, for allowing me some special access to the sorry about that, to the Duke University Duke University football facility. Couldn't be here without you, and very special for you to be here. And Kevin, thanks for having me, and what a special honor for me to tour this facility.
Well, the honor is all mine, man. It's great to see you again, and having been watched several of the shows, it's terrific to see you face to face and be part of this. So thanks very much for the invite.
Absolutely, couldn't be here without you.
Terrific.
All right, so we're going to start off with the first topic here, and we'll get to the other issues in a second. But right now, we're going to talk about the history of Wallace Wade Stadium. Was the only stadium that hosted the Rose, other than the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, in 1967. In honor of the coach, they named it Wallace Wade Stadium. In December 1941, Duke versus Oregon State. We are going to play for the national championship, but because of the attack on Pearl Harbor, they couldn't play any bowl game out west, so they played at Wallace Wade Stadium. Unfortunately, Duke lost. Wallace Wade was the first of North Carolina to have lights in the stadium.
Wow. So what year was that?
1942. It was
42.
Wow.
Yeah. 1942, because the December 7th had happened in 41. Right.
So January of 42. That's cool.
It's very interesting. They're probably not going to bring the Rose Bowl back here anytime soon, but that's it.
Well, it's interesting parallel if you look at the current head coach of the team with Mike Elko, of like a lot of people these days would be surprised or whatever to see a coach from Alabama take over the program at Duke, but that was the story of Wallace Wade and how he came here. And now you got Mike Elko, who obviously was at Texas A&M as the defensive coordinator. He's now going to be his second season, and obviously they got some big things cooking this fall with Clemson and to start the season on Labor Day. But there's so much history in this place. It obviously looks brand new because it got remodeled 5 or 6 years ago with the construction of Blue Devil Tower and so many pieces to it. But it's one of the more historic facilities you'll see in the country.
That's awesome. It's kind of amazing that Wade came here after winning 3 national championships with Alabama in the 1920s. It was just wonderful that he chose to want to be part of Duke University and its athletic programs.
So what years was Wallace Wade a part of the program? Was it?
He starts in 1931. He coaches up into 1942, then goes back into the military, comes out in 1946. And something I read, and Dave, you may know about this too, is that after having been in war, coming back into coaching was not the same. And so 1950, I think, is his last season here.
So. And then the stadium was named Durham, I guess, shortly after, right? So.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is 67, as Jackson said.
Very nice, Jack. What other Duke facts do you have there?
So
We should ask him a couple of questions.
let me ask you, before I get to all of that, I do want to get another history lesson and go back in time before I get to him in a second. So I also want to point out that Duke has won 5 national championships, tied with Indiana. Now this might be familiar with you because you grew up from there. UConn. That's right, UConn, all time behind only UCLA, Kentucky, North Carolina, and all 11 championships combined games all time, and 17 Final Fours, tied for third all time with Kentucky, and only behind North Carolina and UCLA. Not a bad company for a record there, huh?
Darn right. And I'll tell you, Jack, even though I'm born and raised in Connecticut, I take no joy over the fact that they've beaten us in a couple of championship games.
Yeah.
None at all.
But it does speak to what Mike Krzyzewski did, which is crazy when you put it in context. I mean, not just
That's right.
the 5 national championships, but there's no one that stacks up with 1202. That's the amount of wins that he amassed in his time here at Duke. And it's kind of wild to think, or all time, I guess I should say, but it's still wild to think about what he was able to build. And you look at just the last 30 years, there's really no one that's been his equal from when those titles started. It's kind of wild what he's done. And I think the crazy thing to think about it is all the tentacles he has across the collegiate landscape and also in the NBA now with what he did with USA basketball and the gold medals and revitalizing the national program. And how awesome is it that we have John Shire now, someone who worked underneath him, obviously won a championship with him in 2010 as a player, won another one in 2015 as a member of his staff. And, you know, who knows, next spring we might be talking about title number 6 for the team because they're going to be awfully good.
Yeah, I think Coach K really set a level for the sport that I think will be very difficult to top with the amount of time and the amount of wins, like you said, a level of success that's never really been seen before. So I think he's obviously a really monumental figure here, but I agree. I think having someone that's worked with Coach K for a long time, like John Shire, take over the program, I think makes it easy for a transition. Having somebody in the building is definitely helpful for that program. So
For sure.
You know what I always think was one of the startling statistics when fairly early on in Coach's career, once it was determined that he was going to be the coach long term, from that 86 when we played Kentucky for the championship through 94, so we got 9 seasons. We're in 7 Final Fours.
Wow.
I mean, this is unheard of in the modern era.
Yeah,
Right?
it was an unbelievable streak. And as you said, 5 could easily have been 6, 7, 8, however you want to look at it, because his record, particularly in that Elite 8 round of the in-state tournament, is unbelievable in terms of getting the Final Four and then the national semifinals was so good. And what you could obviously say the in-state tournament in its own right is a crapshoot. You know, single elimination, you lose, you go home. And his sustained success is something I don't know if we'll ever see again. Just what he was able to do, particularly that run, as you said, with the first couple of titles, but really starting back in the 80s. And we always talk about Coach being here for 4 decades. He's the first one who likes to joke about he doesn't count the first 3 years. Or then you'll say a lot of people around here may not want to count the first 3 years. And we'll always bring up the concerned Iron Dukes and stuff like that. But no, it's crazy, and it speaks to, you know, Tom Butters and the people who were involved, the athletic director back in the day, that, you know, you look at, it's a little bit of a rabbit hole going down, but the way modern sports were, modern college sports are, I don't know if anyone would get 3 years if it wasn't a smashing success out of the shoot. So you got to give a lot of people credit for building something that obviously has laid the groundwork for what we are looking at right now, looking over the football stadium, but also seeing Cameron out there to our left.
Exactly.
Jackson, can I ask
We hijacked your show. You
Question.
should.
No, I wanted to ask about, I know there's probably so many to pick from, but maybe like your one or like top three, like most memorable Duke sports moments. It could be like modern or maybe from a while ago, but I guess seen so much over the years. So I was just curious if one or a couple stick out.
I think we have to. I hate to interrupt, guys, but
That's
I think
okay.
we have Blake Lumber joining us now.
Yeah, he's there.
Blake, can you hear us?
I can hear you, man. How's it
All
going?
right, Blake. Welcome to the show. This is Kevin Bryant. He is a volunteer. He is a volunteer and works for athletics for Duke University. And we.
Oh man.
Yes, and
Jackson, I bet he's got some stories about Coach K. I bet he's got some
we were just
stories
talking about
Coach
it,
K.
and we were just talking about it, and then we also have the right next to us is the right of me is Dave, who is the current radio play-by voice for.
No way.
Oh yeah, I'm not even kidding. He for Duke men's basketball.
All right, so Blake,
Oh my gosh. So he definitely, now he may not have ever heard of a guy named Cutcliffe, but I'm sure he's heard of a guy named Coach K before.
Oh, I do football as well, so I know Coach.
Oh, Jackson, I'm gonna go ahead and put out there. I think Cutcliffe is one of the biggest. He's one of the biggest kind of underdogs in NCAA football men's coaching. I think he's done an incredible job at Duke. I think if he was younger, he would have been gone by now, but I think he's loyal to the Duke fans, and it's a pretty cool situation they've got going on.
Yeah, there's no question, and obviously, Mike Elko being the head coach right now, and Coach Cutcliffe, what he did, and really revitalizing this program that hadn't had a whole lot of success. I mean, you could go spot here and there. Really got to go back to Spurrier in the 80s.
Yeah.
When you have, a couple of years of sustained success, what, David Cutcliffe did and Mike Elko is the first one to talk about and revitalizing this program, getting the facilities where they need to be modern. And, because when he took over, I think the outdoor practice field was only 70 yards and the indoor practice field didn't.
Wow.
I mean, to think about what he did and the winning that was done. And obviously it's now allowed Mike Elko to come in his first season and, stack on a 9-win season right out of the chute. And obviously we're looking forward to this fall, but no, it's good. Blake, we're getting ready to talk about like best and favorite Duke moments. I don't know if Jackson wants to lead us off. You want to lead us off? I can throw in there.
Jackson, do you have a favorite Duke moment from the last couple of years that sticks in your mind? Football or basketball or anything like that? Would it be maybe when Coach K won the Final Four, his most recent one?
I think for me, Coach, it has to be out of all my favorites on list for any Duke sporting event, has to be Coach K's final game as a head coach before retirement as a basketball coach, because that was one of the most special and incredible moments for this emotional as a Duke student, athlete, or a player or fan, give him a lot of respect. And I think and he was loved and was part of the Duke family forever. And now that he is a Hall of Famer, that's probably why it's number one on my list, because he always was Duke basketball. He has been there since day one, ever since he was hired as head coach in the 70s, and now that he is retired and who is now John Steyer's now the coach, he will always be part of history and of Coach K Court and for Cameron Indoors and the crazies and stuff surrounding it. It will always be in part of him to dedicate him, and I just couldn't be here enough of what he has accomplished as a coach and as a player, and it couldn't be more. Couldn't be more special. And I give him a lot of respect and credit, but yeah.
Hey, Jackson.
Yeah.
Hey, I want you to real quick. Let's play Stump Jackson. Give me Coach K's championships. What years were they? Off the top of your head.
Oh, it's easy. 2001.
2015.
2015.
Mhm.
Then there was back-to-back in the.
And then back-
90s, right?
Mhm.
Back to back in 91, 92.
Mhm.
And then there's,
And-
was there back
John Shires when he was a
John Shi-
player,
Mhm.
that was in 2000.
2010.
10, okay.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
right. That's right.
And Jackson, real quick, is Duke a Coke or a Pepsi school?
They
Oh.
are a Coke school by
There you
far.
go. All right. Okay.
No, but I think picking up off of what Jack said about that last season, despite it kind of ending on a sour note on a loss, but I think kind of like you can tell how emotional and like all the support for those last couple games. And like, I'm sure you could feel that just like kind of all the, and everything was kind of building up to those last couple games because you knew it was his last year. So it must have been pretty emotional being in that environment, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's pieces to it, right? There's the stories and everyone knows what happened here on campus with the last home game, but then the revitalization and getting the defense back together and the story of the team. And then you get into the NCAA tournament, and I'm fortunate that I get to travel with the team and be around them. And on that run, his entire family is with them. And when I say that, I mean grandkids, daughters, stuff like that. So to see them in San Francisco and see that win over Arkansas, that clinch going back to the Final Four and seeing that emotional release, you know, there's the bigger Duke family that I think we all kind of get lumped into, and we're a part of it because Coach K's brought us into it. But to see up close that small nuclear family and what it meant to Mickey and what it meant to Debbie and his daughters and the grandkids was really cool to see up close, and to see, you know, in that run and Coach and his post-game interviews, he was kind of like a kid again. He was kind of on a ride, having fun with it and not being, you know, too gravitas or heavy with the moments. And that's what I'll remember. And to what you're talking about, that moment in San Francisco when they clinched going back to the Final Four was just awesome. That's definitely up there for me. I've been doing the games for 6 years now. If we're going to go on the basketball side of things, the one that jumps out to me the most in terms of moment has to be the double buzzer beater over in Chapel Hill when Wendell Moore Jr. had the game winner. Trey Jones had the one that forced overtime when it looked for everything a couple of different times. Like Duke wasn't going to win on the road, looked like it wasn't going to be our night, and for those guys to come back, and that was just awesome. So it's one of the greatest sporting events you'll ever see. I mean, we're talking these days where it's like feels like everyone's going to a replay review or going to a monitor to put a 10th on here, 2 10ths on there, to have 2 true buzzer beaters to end it. It was pretty awesome. Although Filipowski's dunk or, you know, running layup to end it this year wasn't that bad either. So it's a success over there.
Well, and part of that too is Trey Jones purposely hitting the rim to be able to get that shot to tie it and all. That was
And that was
extraordinary.
right before the pandemic hit in 2020, and that was a team that I was curious what they're going to do in the NCAA tournament, because you know Justin Robinson, who was a walk-on, who earned a scholarship. David Robinson's son was just coming on, had a great game against Carolina and Cameron before everything rightfully got shut down because of the pandemic. But that was always a team with Cassius Stanley and that group that I was very curious what they're going to be able to do in the NCAA tournament.
Kevin, do you have like a favorite moment that stands out from the basketball or football or whatever?
Well, I mean, on basketball, you everybody goes to Christian Laettner's shot against Kentucky, and rightfully so, rightfully so.
That's the classic.
And you know, one of the things that amazes me about this, Dave, I don't know if you've been able to take a look at this, but over in the new Rubenstein Center, there's where we have some of the old uniforms. There is the actual jersey that Christian was wearing the night that he made that shot. And what always amazes me about it is, who thought to save that?
I guess he didn't, right?
You know, I don't know that he had it himself. And the other thing is that it also looks like it's been washed about 150 times, which I don't think happens at all today these days.
Should we ask Uncle Mike if he has a memory about Duke basketball? What do you think?
Uncle Mike, I think you might have a memory about Duke basketball. I mean,
I remember the Laettner shot, but the only thing I know about Duke is that's where Sonny Jurgensen went to.
And I boned up on that, knowing you probably would be on the show today, Uncle Mike. So you're right. And one of the things you might find interesting during his college career here at Duke, Sonny threw a total of 156 passes. total. This was a run offense.
Yeah.
And but man alive, when he especially your Redskins,
Uh-huh.
did he ever show what he had, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He was quarterback when I was a kid.
Jack, can I ask a Duke football question to Dave? So how long have you been calling the Duke football games?
This will be my 7th year this fall.
Okay.
So,
Is there one particular moment or play that you've called that in this stadium that stands out from the last couple of years?
yeah, and recency bias is definitely a thing. Probably the most incredible performance individually I've seen, not a moment, so to speak, was in 2018 when Daniel Jones ran wild against Carolina. Set the total yardage record, set the rushing yardage record, would have had 2 really long touchdown runs, but got caught up inside the 10 over here to our right, but did have one long one heading to the left. That was one of the more incredible performances I've ever seen. But in terms of a moment, I would have to go back to last season, and because it was the story of the season for that Duke football team was all these close games. I think if you look, we talked about the record at the beginning, 9-4 with a bowl win, but the 4 losses were by a combined 14 points and had all these close games, all these comebacks. But a lot of those comebacks came up just a little bit short, and they were playing Wake Forest and had gotten down. Defense had made a stop with about 2 minutes to go to get the football back. And over in the end zone to our left, Samir Hagan's catching a pass from Ryan Leonard with under 2 minutes to go, catching that ball. And just the release for this team that, to get over the hump, to get that lead. Yeah, they had to back it up. They had to get a stop. They had to get an interception from Joyner on the next possession, but they really do it. But that catch for Samir Hagan's to me is maybe a moment in and of itself, but also maybe for what it could mean down the road and a springboard when you get over the hump like that in close games. That's what stood out to me. And Samir is back this year, so is Riley Leonard. So
that's exciting. That's exciting.
Very
Very much.
very cool stuff that will never get old.
So would Daniel Jones be maybe like the answer for the most exciting player or like the most talented player you've seen the past couple of years in the stadium, or
certainly the most well compensated after
Yeah,
yeah, he's electric. I mean, you're obviously going to go to the quarterback position because the stats get piled up and things like that. But there are some guys like this, may be a name that's you guys may not jump off the page, but Ben Humphreys was a linebacker here. He and Joe Giles Harris when I first got here, and he was all over the place. And he had a game down in Miami that I'll never forget that was played in a monsoon where he forced a couple of turnovers, just threw his body around. So he was always a fun guy to watch. But in terms of like, you just don't see anyone that looks like that. That was Daniel. The accuracy, the mind that he had to play the game with, and then the Jets when he got out of the open field, he's different.
Yeah, I guess the success that he's had in the league would speak to that for sure. Yeah, I think you mentioned that he's quick as well. I think when people in the NFL were watching him, they didn't realize how mobile he was, and that was one of his like assets that I think has helped him out in the NFL. So, which
is a crazy story because for those that don't know, with Daniel, he was basically all set to go to Princeton, and it was like a late phone call that they got him here. And I think he came to Duke really without the promise of a scholarship, and then worked his way on, and obviously became one of the best quarterbacks in program history, and now is playing in the NFL with the Giants. And it'd be interesting to see what this year is like for them after that playoff run a year ago.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. Yeah. Do you have any more questions that you want to ask, Jack?
Yes, Blake, I know that you spent some time before at Duke. You were actually at a Duke basketball game a while back when I was at South Carolina at the time, and you actually went to a women's basketball game at Cameron Indoor Stadium before. Do you remember going to that event? And I think you actually went to that event one time. You told me I think you went to that, and I remember you telling me I know that you enjoyed it, Blake, but did you enjoy it? And if you did, tell us what it was like and your experience, and tell us all about it.
Well, Jack, I don't know. We got a lot of viewers and followers on the show, and I don't want to give too much cheat codes out. But somebody a long time ago told me, if you want to meet the men's basketball team, don't go to a men's game. Go to a women's basketball game. They support the women. They're going to go and sit at the women's basketball games close to the court. And a buddy of mine, and this is when I think Duke was maybe women ranked top 10. South Carolina's women ranked top 10. And we got there early, and it was surreal to me because we got to sit in the Cameron Crazy section for the women's basketball game. And sure enough, the men showed up about the second quarter. And it was a fantastic time. That whole building is surreal to me. We walked in the where they camp out, and I've been in Coach K's little, I don't know what they call it, but his little museum off to the left and where his office is. And it's just, I don't know. It's what he's done there is incredible. I'm not sure it's ever going to be replicated again. But Jackson, my favorite basketball moment ever for Duke. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this guy's name, but there was a guy named Zion Williamson that used to play for Duke men's basketball team. And he had a shoe. He once had a shoe fiasco in a very important game. And I would love to know behind the scenes, the scrambling and the phone calls that were coming in from Nike. And I don't know if they wanted it to kind of stay under wraps, or it just wasn't a good look for Nike. And what an interesting situation that was. And I'd be curious to know from behind the scenes what was going on after the shoe fiasco happened.
I think it's going to stay a secret.
Yeah. I think I would have to agree with that after Zion now being started the NBA, just trying to make more money with his own shoe that he's going to create.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who knows what he's going to be doing nowadays for the rest of his playing career.
That could be very controversial.
Oh, that's okay. Well, speaking of controversial, when I was in South Carolina, we had an equipment manager for 40 years, and he showed me in between the shower walls the amount of Converse before you were regulated on how much gear you could give. The amount of Converse he still had from 40 years ago that the Gamecocks had been given was amazing.
Were they all black? The Converse?
I think they were all white, actually.
High tops?
Absolutely high tops.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jackson, real quick, one more fun fact I've got about Duke is, and I don't know, you guys can help me with the years, but I remember Duke's football team, I think it was in Cutcliffe was there. They actually still had a track around the football field for track and field purposes. And I don't know if Duke may have been one of the last ACC teams to still play with a track around their football field. It just shows you how long it's been since I've been to Duke's football field.
No, I suspect we were the last in the ACC to make that adjustment, Blake. You're absolutely right. But it was the first thing we did when we entered into what David mentioned before, was that 3 years of building and rebuilding and additions and all, and we really remade the football stadium in many ways. First thing we did was take out the track. But in order to do that, we had to create a new track and field facility, which is really a pretty neat place in and of itself.
Jackson, I was going to ask David a question about when he's covering the games, if he has like a memorable story or moment from the press box or from, I guess you call it a press box when you're calling the game. Because not like the actual radio or whatever. The terminology broadcast booth. There you go. Yeah. So is there like a memorable story or moment from the past couple of years from calling the game inside the booth?
There's things you see that other people can't see in different angles that you have. And this actually goes back to, we talk about renovations here at Wallace Wade Stadium. There was my first year, which would have been 2017-18. They were actually doing renovations in Cameron Indoor. It wasn't really affecting the fans, but they were rebuilding what's called the Crow's Nest, which is where the broadcast positions are. And they kind of made something that was temporary for television to be there. And then for the radio broadcasters, they moved us to the corner. And we had a great angle, and you get to see stuff along the bench that, on television, they don't really capture that well. And to me, one of the things I'll never forget is, that was a game on senior night for Grayson Allen when Duke was down by 10, I think it was at halftime, and came back, ended up winning the game by 10 at home. But his face and Coach K's reaction when they were, walking off the court and having their moment of what he meant to this program. And I think it just speaks to, Coach K and the relationship he builds with guys and what they mean to this team. And, everyone has stories they want to talk about with different stuff like that. But to me, that's the cool part, is you get to know these guys, you get to be at practice. Like, I obviously know Grayson very well. And to see those moments come full circle and the relationship those guys have is pretty cool. There's a bunch of moments that I can't talk about that I've seen at practice that are always fun to see as well. That's one of the cool things about being in the job. You can't talk about it, nothing negative or anything like that, but there's a lot of cool stuff you could see. I'll just say that Coach K, he can give one hell of a speech after practice and stuff like that. The stories that he can tell that are, meant specifically for the team, that's like, crazy stuff, and the way he can go off the cuff for 5-10 minutes, and you can see why he's dynamic. Obviously, the basketball tactician is there. The X's and O's are really important, but his emotional intelligence, his knowing how to deal with people, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, and I think that side probably doesn't maybe get enough credit, is like the interpersonal and like managing a team, because the team, especially with college kids, it's like you have to manage personalities, right? And so I'm sure he was probably just as good at that from the basketball side and like the classroom or personal side, right? So
for sure. And I think the thing about him was, obviously there was an age differential by the time I got here. You know, he's in his late 60s and now into his 70s in coaching. He's talking to teenagers for the most part, you know, in the one and done era, and those guys coming in. But he always treated them like people, and he had relationships. He showed different sides of his personality. They gave and take, like take shots at each other, have fun with that. I mean, they had their relationship, and it wasn't like, you know, here was the guy that was the austere guy, the legend in the game, and you're lucky to be around him. No, they had their authentic relationships, and it was just really cool to see how he could do that and navigate, you know, what at times was a 50-year age difference. But he could talk on their level, they could talk on his level. And I think to some extent, it always surprised the players when they came in, you know, because they're thinking of Coach K, the legend, and here's the guy I'm going to learn from, you know, how down to earth and easy to get along with he is.
Yeah. And then I was also going to ask, apart from calling basketball and then calling football games, apart from like the general like size of the stadiums, is there a huge difference in between calling the Duke basketball games and calling the football games that you've noticed?
Well, the nuts and bolts from a broadcaster perspective, this is the broadcaster door portion of the podcast, I guess, but it's like, there are things you think about, like obviously football, you're dealing with 200 people versus 30 in a basketball game. So the tools you need to have to be able to know, we use what's called a 2-deep, which is basically starters and backups in football. So you've got a spotting board or some document that has everybody's names, hometowns, some stats about them. So you can imagine the preparation's a little more intense.
Yeah, so
you're learning about
yeah.
so many different guys and things like that. And the broadcast is a little different because you have a sideline reporter, you have an analyst, you have an engineer, you might have a spotter, which is someone that helps point out who made a tackle or who made a catch, because you're trying to identify numbers you can see from up here from 100 yards away. And depending on, you know, things that you may not think about from the stands, but one of the first things I look for is the uniform combo and what is the contrast between the jerseys and the numbers. Am I gonna be able to see their numbers? Because you have like a matte gray number against a garnet jersey from up here, you can't tell what numbers are. They're trying to figure that out. So how do you identify different things? So that's the biggest thing. Obviously with basketball, the number of guys that are on the team, the number of guys who are going to play is much smaller. So you're not worried about memorizing names and learning and identifying who's who. There's definitely a different art to it. And there's a rhythm to each one. Basketball is kind of nonstop. You're constantly describing action versus football. You have a play, and then you have about 20 seconds where the analyst comes in, kind of tells you what happens, and then you have another play. So you develop a different rhythm to each one. Each one are awesome. I mean, the moments in football are huge, but there's nothing quite like when you're in Cameron and there's a 10-0 run or 15-0 run, and the lid is literally about to blow off the place.
Yeah. Was there, and I'm sure you've seen times in Cameron or in Wallace Wade where something happens and like the crowd kind of wakes up and has a big effect on the game. And I imagine that's part of the reason Cameron maybe has remained so small and so intact is because of the big home field advantage that you get playing in a smaller stadium like that, where like I'm sure you've seen the crowd can really influence the game, particularly at Cameron, right?
No, I mean, there's nothing like it. The energy, the excitement, the heat, literally when you're in there, it's hot, the air is heavy. The crazies are right on top of you, the different chants that they can do and the way they can lift a team. I think sometimes, yes, it's about intimidating and affecting the opponent, but more often than not, it's about lifting up Duke and what, you know, imploring them to go on a 10-0 run, 12-0 run, to get that turnover, to hit a shot, and the fuel that gives you, whether it's making a comeback or going on some crazy stuff. But there's so many different things I've seen in there. The Zion 360 dunk against Clemson's one. He had another dunk against Eastern Michigan that was wild. Cassius Stanley had a couple of huge dunks. I think it was against NC State on a Monday. I mean, we can go on down the list of different moments you've seen in there and different runs where it's like an out-of-body experience. And you see different teams that are really good kind of fall apart. Talking about the opposition and stuff like that just can't handle it when the crowd goes crazy. But it's awesome.
Yeah, I think given Duke's reputation and stuff, Jack, you always hear about players being excited to play at Cameron for the first time, or you say players want to play in the ACC, so they have the opportunity to play at like a historic stadium like Cameron, and so that makes a lot of sense, right?
It does, and that's why it's become a very special place. And
you think Cameron is possibly one of the greatest, the most historic or / greatest stadium in college sports or even sports in general, right? You probably feel that
I
way.
think it's one of them. I mean, there's that, but there is also the Dean Smith Center out in Chapel Hill. That's
I think Cameron's got to be personally.
but I agree.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Cameron Indoor is definitely a very special place.
Yeah, I think because of like we were saying earlier, the size of it as well. You don't really get anything like that in any other school or
No.
any other sport, really, given how intimate it is.
No, I agree, and and you top that with compared with all the other with the other college sports basketball pavilions like over there the pavilion at Lawrence, Kansas
Fog Allen.
Fog
Yep.
Allen building.
oh yeah that place, and then of course and then of course Rupp Arena out in Lexington. That's also one of them, one of those places too. But then of course there's Dean Smith Center, but of course you're right. But there's no other place like Cameron Indoor Stadium where it's a very special place. It's been there for decades. It's been there ever. It's like a museum. So there's lots of history in there, and I mean there's all and you look like the different championships they won and the different teams and displays that I was on. I've actually got a chance to tour the place one time with my good volunteer athletic director friend Kevin, who is right next to me, and I can tell you that I realized walking in there when I first saw it in person, that reminded me of a high school gym that you would see that you would see for any basketball tournament that you would go to, but when I think about Cameron Indoor, there's another place similar to that anywhere in the country for anywhere college basketball. The pavilion out in Stanford University is similar to that, but in women's basketball. So there's a place that's similar to that, and I think that I think those are pretty similar if you really think about it. And I think they're all I think they're right there with them.
The interesting thing about Cameron is there's so few, I don't know if you would agree with this, places you go to in the country. You mentioned Fog Allen. I would put Madison Square Garden in that same vein of when you walk in, you just feel history. And it's hard to describe to people what that feeling is like when you look around, and just because it's been modernized in some respects, but the history and the things that make it great have not been changed. And with the architecture, the structure, the look of it, the feel of it, when you're in the hall, like the concession stands are not fancy, but it's like you can see the pictures and stuff on the wall. And when Coach K was retiring in his last season, Turner did this really nice piece where they kind of had him watch some moments from his career on the floor of Cameron, and he talked about what a majestic place it was. And look, there's nothing that tops when the crazies are going wild in a game, and all that stuff is awesome. But if you have an opportunity to walk through, sometimes I do, to do an interview or whatever at night, or to go to the coach's office and the lights are off and you walk up and look at the banners, it is surreal. Those are some of my favorite moments in a place like that. And as nice as some newer facilities are in the country, they don't have that charm. They don't have that history. That to me is what makes Cameron special. I don't know if you would agree or not.
Oh boy, sometimes to go in there, as you say, for some reason the lights haven't come on, and we may sometimes even have to open up some of the shutters to get some bit of natural light in. And I've taken people in who have said, well, I'd love to see it with the lights on, but this is kind of a religious experience being in here. There's just that feeling. It's so quiet, and you just feel the history of it. You're right. I agree.
So what's the one cheer that you're at a Duke basketball game?
I'd say go to hell, Carolina. Go to hell would be the one thing.
I always think of whenever like a Duke basketball game is, I think of the Cameron Crazies like doing your hands out, and like right? And then right in front of them is some like freshman guard from like Virginia who's like people behind him, and so intimidated. Like that's the image that I picture with Cameron.
I mean, Let's Go Duke is the iconic one that you hear all the time. One of my favorites always though is the whenever there's a big recruit in the building or a former player, it happened last year with Paulo and Wendell, who were actually back because they had NBA games nearby for the Carolina game. The sit with us chant from the Crazies when they're trying to bring a recruit over to hang out with them. To me, that's always one of the cool parts, and to see the former players go across and sit with the Crazies.
Yeah, I know. I can speak from personal experience having my master's program graduation in Cameron. Even at an event like that, totally non-athletic related, you can definitely feel the atmosphere and feel the history. And some venues just have something special about them that you can't always quantify, but whenever you're in there, it just feels special. So I totally agree. Now,
So
Jack,
do they play soccer and lacrosse at Wallace Wade, or is there a different venue for soccer and lacrosse?
Separate venue, where both of them are in that same venue, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually just right behind us. Koskinen Stadium is where they play, so it's right nearby.
Jack, can I ask, since we're close to the football season starting?
We got now.
He's there.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask Dave about because he mentioned the opener versus Clemson, right? That's away, or is that here? Right?
That's here. That's here.
Labor Day night.
A huge game for the season. Is that the game that you're most looking forward to this fall, or is there a different one maybe that you have circled?
There's a lot this year that are, I mean, you can take your pick. I mean, that one's going to be awesome just because not just the atmosphere, not just the stadium, but the stage and what it means for the program to be the only college football game that's on. It's going to be on ESPN at 8 o'clock. So to me, that's obviously going to be one that catches your attention. Notre Dame is coming in late September. That's going to be an incredible atmosphere to see what that's going to be like. And then this team's going to have a chance to go on the road and prove it a little bit too. Obviously, you have the rivalry game over at Carolina in November, but also a chance to go to Tallahassee and play Florida State, who's supposed to be really good. So you got a handful there, but for me, if you look at the standard in the ACC for the last decade or so is Clemson. So to get them to open the season on your home field, that's going to be hard to top.
Hey, Jackson, as Gamecock graduates, we would love nothing more. We would love nothing more than for Duke, the Blue Devils, to put it on Clemson, wouldn't we?
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that would make us Gamecocks alum very happy if we were to get that W on that opening night. I would actually feel very confident about it if we were to get this win, even though it's not going to be easy. But I don't think we can. But I know we have faith. But if we were going to get the win against Clemson, yeah, that would make. You're right. It would make Gamecock fans a lot more happier if they get done. The Gamecocks would definitely love that. We'll love to hear about that.
I think Clemson's fan base would increase twofold overnight if they put it on little old Clemson.
No, and I think what Dave was saying earlier about how it being the first game of the season and on national TV against historically the toughest team in the conference. So it's definitely a huge opportunity to really set your season off on the right foot. It's like a game that can give you a lot of positive momentum, right?
No, for sure. And particularly this is a little bit in the weeds football wise with the way things are changing this year in the ACC, that you're no longer having divisions. So the top two teams get to go play in Charlotte for the championship game. So just from a practical purpose, I don't think anyone thinks Clemson's going to be anything but really, really good. But if you get a win over them, that's a feather in your cap and potential tiebreaker down the road for a chance to go play for a conference championship. I know the coaches would go crazy if they hear you start talking about trying to get to Charlotte to play for an ACC title this time of year. But from a practical standpoint, that would be a huge win to get for the program, but also for a chance to ultimately have a chance to be still playing football in December.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so the one game that we didn't mention is, we'll walk the next game. Let's say, so I don't know if Clemson, I mean, if Duke's going to find a way to pull this one off, it's not going to be an easy game. But I mean, if they do lose the opener, there's still lots of football left. Let's say they bounce back against Lafayette in the next home game, a 6 o'clock kickoff. But then the one after that, Northwestern, they have been in the news lately, so I don't, so,
Indeed.
yeah. Yeah. So I do think Duke will find a way
Playing
to beat
Notre
those
Dame
guys.
at home at the end of September, which should be a great game. And they got the in-state games versus NC State, Wake Forest, and UNC. So I'm looking forward to the season. Right? Are you, Jack?
I am. It's going to be a great college football season, and I think we got a lot that's lots to be excited for, and yeah, I think but yeah, no, I mean, no matter where I'm at, I feel like I always like to be involved in an in-person college football game, no matter where I'm at, or no matter what team I cheer for. I actually want to be the person that wants to be like a neutral fan that supports pretty much anybody. That's all I'm here for, and that's what good guy sports should be really all about.
Since we're here at Wallace Wade Stadium, maybe we should ask some questions about the stadium and some information about the stadium. So what's actually I can pull it up, but the full capacity of the Wallace Wade Stadium?
40,004 is the capacity for Wallace Wade Stadium, which is a little bit higher. You can actually see some remnants of the construction. You can kind of see the seam line down towards the field of where they put in the additional stand. So you can see how they expanded it when they made those renovations of taking the track out. I mean, I'm biased. I'll fully lay that out with all of my Duke stuff on or whatever, but traveling around the ACC, it's the nicest venue in the conference. I mean, from obviously with Blue Devil Tower and what we can do from a suite standpoint, but also just the views you get from here on the west side of the stadium looking across. It's just remarkable what they've done and upgrading everything, but still keeping, architecturally it looking like everything else on West Campus, which is a tricky thing to pull off to keep the history, but also have it look as clean and nice as it does. I don't know. Can we spin around the camera?
Yeah,
and give people a peek?
let's do that.
I'm sitting here talking about
Let's do a quick spin around so we can show off the stadium. Wallace Wade, 40,000 of it. And I think you mentioned earlier the renovations were completed around 2017. And so I'm sure renovating a stadium and it looks state of the art. I know when I was walking around while I was in graduate school here, I definitely noticed how state of the art and clean and modern everything looks. And so I'm sure we're taking around recruits or students or whoever it is that's having an updated modern stadium like this is definitely, I'm sure, a huge help for recruiting, and not just kind of builds and helps the program in general, right?
It just shows the investment and the commitment to the program, but also there's tangential benefits that maybe people don't realize of, on the second floor here, which we call the club level, where there's a chance for people to grab something to eat and watch games as well. Well, during the week, that also serves where we do what's called training table, where student athletes can come and have dinner, and it's catered by the folks in the building. So it's another space that you can utilize for student dining. Up here on the fourth floor, we're recording, which is the press level, is where a lot of the teams will eat their pregame meals, whether it be soccer, lacrosse, whatever. It's just a convenient place. So as you guys know, college campuses anywhere in the country, the more space, the better. And the chance that you can do things for student athletes is awesome. And that's a piece of this. We get caught up in what happens on game day, but the fact that it adds those elements with this facility and being 4 floors and a chance to be able to host events and do things like that to expand what you can do for the student athlete experience has been a huge part of the benefit as well.
Yeah, and the fact that it's right next to Cameron Indoor and everything's kind of connected here is something that's cool. And when I was walking around and seeing, I think it's like Kville, where that little area while the students walk and stuff like that, and everything being centered around here, I think it makes for a really centered environment where I'm sure all the student athletes feel like they're able to support each other and go to games. And
for the most part, Cameron's open on game. That's a huge day for you guys, getting tours and stuff like that, and people coming through on football game day.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, right. The last time Notre Dame was in, I mean, we couldn't believe the lines of folks trying to come in, and we could only take them in for maybe 10 minutes, and then and bring them out, and we would take them in at 75 at a time.
Wow!
It was just incredible. And we were trying to get them to realize, the game is starting over in the football stadium. Let's go over and watch.
I remember Ed Bill that night. They're probably just trying to get inside. It was like 20 degrees. The last time
it was
cold. It was a night.
It was. It was.
All right, Jack, you want to have any couple last things before you wrap up?
Yeah, I want to do. Yeah, I want to get into real quick, a couple of few minute topics here, and then we'll wrap this up with some.
We got like 2 or 3 minutes.
2 or 3 minutes. I want to get really quick with a few more seconds before we get stuff out of here and call it a day. So I do want to ask you a couple of things I want to get to for involving with issues in college athletics. So the first one is the name, image, and likeness. So
Yeah, I don't think we're really talking about
I
stuff
know.
like that. We're just kind of talking about
I know,
Duke in general.
I know, but I know, but
Do you have any more
yeah, but we'll
questions?
save that thought for another time.
Yeah, no,
For
it's just,
when I get home. But for right now, let's
Mhm.
let's yeah, I know I know, Blake. We won't get to that in that this week, but for right now, we're going to finish off here and talk about some games that we missed on the schedule. Let's see. The one after Northwestern, they have to travel to UConn on the 23rd of September.
what's that? Does Dave travel for all the away games, or you just call the games here?
No, we go home and away, so we travel with the team and we're embedded with them and with the coaches and the players and we're lucky enough that we have a good partnership with Delta and they take good care of us getting us on the road. So no, we'll be at every game. Looking forward to getting to Connecticut. I haven't been to that football stadium yet in Ridgely Field, so it'll be interesting.
Well, I'm sure they're happy to serve you, and I think they're really happy to have you for your away game travel needs for your players and coaches. And
I was gonna ask Dave, the last question is the favorite away stadium that he's called the game in for basketball or for football.
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, Madison Square Garden is at the top of the list,
Is that
right?
for the
Anytime you have a
tournament?
chance to, we go up there just about every year. Normally it's like around December, around the holidays, which New York City at Christmas time
That's
doesn't
awesome.
hurt anything either. Yeah, just the history and obviously how much as Coach K has won there at MSG, it's hard to beat calling a game at the Garden.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
but then one other venue I want to throw in out there. I actually watch this every year. It's State Farm Champions Classic on ESPN, and usually every year it switches to different cities. But last year they were Indy, but this year it's always the same teams. You got Duke, Kansas, Michigan State, and Kentucky.
and we're going back to Shire's hometown in
Yep,
Chicago.
Chicago.
They're playing at the United Center.
Yep, up the nice there. It's been there before. It's always a classic, and it's televised on ESPN. And that's right. It's going to be I think it's going to be a great trip and probably a great venue for Mike Krzyzewski. He also grew up there, and I have to say it's going to be probably one of the top places other than Madison Square Garden.
And good vibes too, because the last time Duke played there in the Champions Classic was 1-2 against Michigan State. I think both teams are going to be ranked in the top 10.
Yep.
If you look at preseason projections, so good vibes heading into that one too. Looking back, that was a game Grayson Allen went wild in his senior season, the second half after Bagley. Yeah, I think got poked in the eye in that one in the first half. Couldn't play in the second half, and Grayson went wild. So we got some good mojo going.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well, that's going to be a.
Basketball season's never too far away, is it?
It's never too early to talk basketball, and it's right around the corner, and I think that all of our Duke alums will do great in the NBA, and yeah, I'm sure I'll mention their names down the road, and yeah, I mean there's lots to be excited about for Duke athletics and for the school itself, and
Wrap things
I
up.
couldn't, that's right. I couldn't be more excited and thrilled to be with you guys, and it's a very special day for me, and for me to get a VIP in here to see what this experience is like. I couldn't thank you guys enough. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you guys for allowing me to invite me up to the press box. I really enjoyed this experience, and I have to do this again for any more professional sports teams around the country. And I hope this isn't the last time I do it here as a co-host on the show. I hope I get to do this for any special sporting venues around the country. Thank you guys for having me, and I love to be back here soon. And
thank you to Kevin.
Thank you to Kevin, and thank you to Kevin and Dave for allowing me to check out this place, the special place itself, and in the stadium. And I couldn't thank you guys for allowing me to be here, and couldn't thank you guys enough for allowing me to be part of this Duke University athletics tour.
Been great. Thanks for having us.
Well, you bet.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Jackson, awesome show. You look like you're built for that room, and hopefully we'll see Duke play on a battleship at some point again. I'd love to see that. So we got an inside connection.
Yeah, that would be nice. I bet we love to see all the I bet we love to see all those matchups again. You never know, but great to have you guys. we're signing off. Thanks
All
for
right.
being here, guys, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank
I'll,
you all.
I'll be back in my studio
Great meeting you.
next week. See you guys.
Here.
Nice to meet you, Dave. Kevin, nice to see you. Nice to meet you, and great to have you on. And we'll talk. I don't know when I'm going to see you again, but I hope it's more. But I hope I see you. But I hope this isn't the last time I see you. But if it isn't, have a great time with sports with sports this fall, and I hope to get you again. And please come back again. We love to have you guys on again on my show soon.
Well,
Thanks for
thanks.
having me.
And we know you'll be back soon.
I hope
Don't
so.
worry.
I hope
We
so.
look forward to
All right. Go Duke.
it.
Go Duke, Mike. See ya.
Yep. See you. Bye.
Bye.